Asexuality, allosexuality, what's the difference? Why does it matter? Let's talk about it. So I've been doing astat advice for a while now, and for me, from my side of this conversation, it has been one long ongoing discussion that has evolved from the early days of answering very basic questions to today, where we're talking about more complex things and talking about more complex ideas in culture and politics and beyond. But it's important for me to remember that I am not the only person having this conversation, and that over the years of doing astat advice, I'm not just talking to the same people who were there at the very beginning. Although, if you're here from the very beginning, I'm glad you're still here. We've picked up new people along the way and continue to pick up new people. And I was thinking that it was really important for me to not forget that fact, that there are new folks here, and it would be good to cover some of the basics in a refreshed new way. Because it's very easy for me to take for granted that everybody here knows all the basics, and that is just not always true. Plus, for everyone who is new here, you deserve the basics just as much as the folks who have been here a while. So that's what we're doing in this video. In this video, we are talking about a big overarching idea: asexuality and allosexuality. How are they alike? How are they different? And why does it matter for us to know about them? Defining the terms. So before we get into defining allosexuality and asexuality, I just want to set up a little context. For the purposes of our conversation, we are talking about sexual orientations. So we're not talking about behaviors. That's kind of another conversation entirely. Because if we get into a conversation about behaviors, you can be of a sexual orientation and engage in behaviors that are typically associated with a different orientation, and without your orientation really changing. Straight folks can sometimes engage in gay stuff. Gay folks can sometimes engage in straight stuff, but they're still sometimes straight and gay. So this conversation is just about sexual orientation, how people experience sexual attraction. So let's think of all the sexual orientations that exist as being in one big pool of sexuality. It's the big pool of sexual orientation, and everybody's in it. In a really broad sense, the pool has two sections in it. There's the allosexual section of the pool and the asexual section of the pool. So over in the allosexual side of the pool, you have everybody who experiences sexual attraction most of the time. So allosexuality is very basically every person who does experience sexual attraction as their pattern of experience over time. Over on the other side of the pool is asexuality. So in the asexuality side of the pool, you have everybody who does not experience sexual attraction or who rarely experiences sexual attraction. So those are all the orientations that are over on the asexual side, not or rarely experiencing sexual attraction as your pattern of experience over time. That is the basic distinction. So it's important to recognize here that for both sides of the pool, both allosexuality and asexuality, within each side, there is a great amount of variation. Each side is also a spectrum of experiences. So over on the allosexual side of the pool, that includes heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, pansexuality, omnisexuality, all the sexual orientations that are about experiencing sexual attraction of some kind in some direction. There is also a range and spectrum of experience over on the asexual side of the pool. So that's where you get that asexual folks, gray sexual, demisexual, ace flux folks, all the micro labels. That's the wide range of experiences over there. The two key things to remember here is that both sides of the sexual orientation pool are spectrums of experience, and both sides contain variations of that one central expression. And two, it's not a bunch of boxes. Each of the spectrums are not discrete, clear, boundaried boxes. It's a pool, right? Everyone's just floating around on their side of the pool in the water. It's fluid. There can be variation. There can be messiness in the boundaries. And that's true for both sides. So that's the basic distinction between allosexuality and asexuality. But what about the gray area? The gray area. So if you have been around a while or exist at all on the ace spectrum, you might be thinking to yourself, now hold on here, that basic distinction seems a little too basic. There are people on the asexual spectrum who do in fact experience sexual attraction. And I would say, yeah, you're right. There are. Gray sexual folks exist. Demi folks exist. Ace flux folks exist. Yes, there are some people on the ace spectrum who do experience sexual attraction. So this is sort of the gray area of the allosexual, asexual, giant pool of sexual orientations. So let's talk a little bit more about that gray area and how we make those distinctions. So yes, gray, demi, and ace flux folks do experience sexual attraction as part of their lived experience. But remember, we're talking about sexual orientation, and that is a pattern of experience over time. So as you know, folks who are gray sometimes or only rarely experience sexual attraction as part of their lived experience. Demisexual folks will only experience sexual attraction under the specific circumstance of developing an emotional connection to someone. Ace flux folks are just in flux. They never really know what's going to happen. Their experience will shift from one to another to different parts of one spectrum, from one side to the other. It's always a constant state of flux. It's important here to focus on that pattern over time bit. For many folks who are here in this gray area of experiencing sexual attraction, the majority of the time they are spending in their lived experience, they're not experiencing sexual attraction. The not experiencing sexual attraction is the dominant part of their experience. And again, that's not everyone. That's for most, some, but not everyone. And because for many of these folks in the gray area, that not experiencing sexual attraction is the dominant pattern of experience over time, or is a very significant pattern of experience over time, it makes sense that these will be included in the ace spectrum. But there's a step further that we can go to explain why these folks belong under the ace spectrum. Another important part of what makes asexuality asexuality is its relationship or its position to allosexuality. Allosexuality is socially and culturally favored. It is prized and privileged in our culture. It is socially expected. You are believed from the time you were born that you're allo. It's just what we expect. And we have built a whole structure of cultural norms around believing that you are naturally allosexual. And all of those norms support and privilege allosexuality, while asexuality in this construct is pathologized, it is otherized, or it is rendered invisible. Allosexuality possesses a power in our culture that asexuality does not. And that ultimately matters. That positionality to the power of allosexuality is what makes gray, demi, and ace flux folks asexual. It's what puts them under the ace umbrella. They are also experiencing sexual attraction in a non-normative way. The expressions of these identities are also treated by allosexuals as the other. The details aren't all the same for gray, demi, and ace flux folks, but the end result is the same. They are considered to be an other. That's why they're considered to be under the ace umbrella. Why does this matter? So why does all that really matter? Well, there are two things. First, I think it's important that we don't see allosexuality as the entirety of sexuality, with asexuality being just some offshoot or some place outside of sexuality. That divided conception of human sexuality always places asexuality in the place of being a deviation or a brokenness, some wrong version of the right way to experience sexual orientation. So seeing asexuality and allosexuality as two sides of the same pool is really important. It acknowledges that both sides of the pool are necessary to make the pool to begin with, and that neither side of the pool is any more real, any more valid, or any more important than the other. And secondly, I think this understanding of the relationship between asexuality and allosexuality is important because it helps us understand how and why ace folks get marginalized. It explains how we end up experiencing discrimination. If you think of asexuality as just a broken form of allosexuality or some place outside of allosexuality, which is everything, ace folks are always going to be seen as in need of repair, in need of being fixed. And it's that broad construction that sits at the very heart of why we are marginalized, why we get pathologized, why we get othered, why we are rendered invisible. But when you hold the more complete worldview that we are two sides of the same pool, you then see sexuality as being just one really wide spectrum of experience that contains everything from all to nothing. It's a more inclusive conception, and it's the right conception. It's what theorist Gail Rubin calls benign sexual variation. All of these options that exist, every option that exists, with no moral value and no hierarchy placed on any of them. They're all on the same plane. They're all just options. And holding that worldview helps us as ace folks explain our experience, explain how we can exist to begin with, and explain how we fit into a larger picture of experience. It's helpful. And I hope this video was helpful. If it was helpful as a refresher, that's awesome. If this was new for you and it was helpful, that's even more awesome. And I hope it means that you will stick around. If you did enjoy this video, there are many more for you to see on the channel. And you can also follow me at all of these places here. And I'll be seeing you soon in a new video. And as always, I'm glad you're here.